Most gardeners put away their seed packets in June. They figure the planting season is over. The summer heat is too much. Nothing will grow. And that thinking? It costs them an entire harvest. Here's what those gardeners don't know. July is not the end of your growing season. July is the beginning of your most productive one. The vegetables you plant right now, in this heat, will produce more flavor, more yield, and more nutrition than anything you grew in spring. And if you miss this window, you won't get another chance until next year. Today I'm going to show you exactly 8 vegetables you need to get in the ground this month. Some of them will surprise you. Some of them you've probably never considered planting in summer, and at least one of them gets dramatically sweeter after a frost, something most gardeners never experience because they never plant at the right time. If you want a refrigerator full of homegrown food this fall, stay with me through every single one of these. And if you grow your own food or want to start, make sure you're subscribed. We cover real, practical gardening advice every week for American home gardeners just like you. Let's start with something most people completely misunderstand about fall gardening. The reason July planting works isn't luck. There's actual science behind it. And once you understand it, you'll never skip this planting window again. Here's the key concept. As summer moves toward fall, the days get shorter. And when daily sunlight drops below 10 hours, most plants essentially stop growing. Scientists call this the Persephone period. Your crops need to reach nearly full size before that light threshold hits. If they don't make it in time, they just sit there. Small, unproductive, frozen in place. Planting in July gives your vegetables the long, bright days of summer to build strong roots and full, leafy canopies. Then, as the temperatures cool down in September and October, those plants shift into their final, most flavorful phase. That's the window you're working with. And it's more precise than most gardeners realize. So here's how you calculate it. Take the average date of your first frost. Look up your specific area. This varies a lot across the country. Then take the days to maturity listed on your seed packet. Add 10 to 14 extra days on top of that. That accounts for the slower growth rate in autumn when light is declining. Count backward from your frost date. That's your planting deadline. For most of the Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, and Pacific Northwest, that deadline lands squarely in July. Miss it, and your crops won't mature. Hit it, and you'll be harvesting well into October and November. Now let's get into the 8 vegetables. Vegetable 1. Carrots. Carrots might be the single most rewarding vegetable you can plant in July. And here's the reason most people never discover that. Spring-planted carrots often taste bland. They mature in summer heat, and the flavor never fully develops. Your carrots, they go through something remarkable. As temperatures drop in October, the carrot plant starts converting its stored starches into sugar. It's a survival mechanism. The plant is essentially making its own antifreeze. And the result is a carrot so sweet, so rich, so different from anything you've bought at a grocery store. It genuinely surprises people the first time they taste it. That flavor only happens with fall-grown carrots, and it only happens if you plant in July. Now here's the tricky part. Carrots are slow germinators. They typically take 7 to 14 days to sprout. In July heat, the soil surface dries out fast. If that soil crust forms before your seeds sprout, the seeds die. The fix is simple but critical. After you sow your carrot seeds at a 1/4 inch depth, lay a piece of damp burlap, a wooden board, or even a sheet of cardboard directly over the row. This keeps the surface moist and shaded. Check under it every single day. The moment you see the first tiny green shoots, remove the cover immediately. If you leave it even 1 day too long, the seedlings will stretch and weaken. For variety selection, Danvers and Chantenay types are your best choices for heavy fall soils. Nantais types are sweeter but need loose sandy soil to develop properly. One more thing about carrots. Remove any rocks or clumps from your soil before planting. If a growing root hits an obstacle, it forks and splits. Those roots are still edible, but you want straight, solid carrots. Deep, loose, rock-free soil gives you that. Vegetable 2. Beets. Here's something most gardeners don't know about beet seeds. What looks like one beet seed is actually a cluster of 2 to 5 seeds pressed together. It's called a multi-germ seed ball, which means when you plant one seed, multiple seedlings come up from the same spot. If you don't thin them out when they reach about 2 inches tall, you get a tangle of roots all competing for the same space. The result is a bunch of small, deformed, twisted beets that never size up properly. Thin to one plant every 3 to 4 inches. I know it feels wrong to pull out perfectly healthy seedlings, that the ones you leave will reward you with full, round, beautiful roots. Now for July specifically, choose varieties like Red Ace or Detroit. Dark red. These are bred to handle the heat of summer establishment while still sizing up beautifully in fall cool. Here's the flavor science with beets, same as carrots. Cool autumn temperatures trigger the conversion of starches to sugars. Fall beets are noticeably sweeter and more tender than their summer counterparts. One nutritional note to keep in mind. Beets need boron in the soil to develop properly. A boron deficiency during rapid summer growth causes something called internal black spot. Dark, discolored rings inside the root that make it unmarketable and unpleasant to eat. If your soil hasn't had beets before, add a small amount of agricultural boron before planting. Your local extension office can advise on exact amounts for your region. Vegetable 3. Kale. Kale planted in July becomes a completely different vegetable by October. And I mean that literally. Summer kale is tough. It's bitter. The leaves are thick and almost leathery. But fall kale. Kale that has been hit by frost undergoes the same starch-to-sugar conversion we talked about with carrots and beets. The bitterness disappears. The flavor becomes rich, almost nutty. The texture softens into something genuinely enjoyable. And here's the part that will surprise you. Kale is one of the most frost-hardy vegetables you can grow. It can survive temperatures in the single digits. We're talking well below freezing. In many parts of the country, July-planted kale keeps producing fresh leaves clear into December and sometimes January. That's fresh food from your garden when everything else is long gone. Start your kale seeds in small trays in early to mid-July, rather than direct sowing. This protects young seedlings from the flea beetles that are extremely active in summer. Those tiny beetles chew dozens of small holes through new leaves and can devastate a young kale plant fast. Growing the seedlings under cover for 2 to 3 weeks gives them time to toughen up before going into the ground. Lacinato Calais and Winterbore are both excellent choices for fall production. Both develop thick, cold-resistant leaves that actually improve with every frost. Vegetable 4. Say. Cabbage is where July timing becomes absolutely critical. Here's why. A full-sized cabbage head needs 75 to 90 days to develop. Count backward from your first frost date. Do that math right now in your head. In most of the northern and central United States, that calculation points directly at early July. Yeah, not late July. If you wait until the end of the month to start cabbage, you will likely end up with a half-formed head when the freeze arrives. The outer leaves will be there, but the tight, solid head inside that you actually want to harvest, it won't have had enough time. Choose varieties like Brunswick or Late Flat Dutch for July sowing. These are longer season varieties, but they produce dense, heavy heads that store beautifully after harvest. Here's a mistake a lot of gardeners make with fall cabbage. They keep fertilizing with nitrogen all the way through the season. In the early stages, that's correct. Cabbage is a heavy nitrogen feeder and needs that push to build its big outer leaves. But once the head starts forming and tightening in late September, stop the nitrogen. If you keep pushing nitrogen at that stage, the head absorbs water too fast. The inner leaves expand faster than the outer ones can stretch, and the head splits open. A split cabbage head is still edible, but it won't store well, and it's vulnerable to rot and insects. Back off nitrogen once heading begins, and let the plant finish naturally. That's 4 down. 4 more to go. And the next one on this list is something a lot of gardeners completely write off as a spring-only crop. but planted in July. It becomes one of the most rewarding vegetables in your entire fall garden. Stay with me. 5. Broccoli. Here's the problem with spring broccoli that almost nobody talks about. You do everything right. Plant on time. You water, fertilize, weed, and then in June, just when the heads are forming, the heat hits. The flower buds loosen. They start to open. The head goes from tight and dark green to yellow and bitter almost overnight. You missed it by days. That is the fundamental flaw of spring broccoli in most of the country. Now flip that around. Plant broccoli in July and the head initiates in September. Temperatures are dropping. Days are cooling. The buds form in cold weather and stay tight. You actually have time to watch it develop, check it daily, and harvest it at perfect peak. Fall broccoli doesn't bolt. It doesn't rush. It finishes exactly when conditions are best for it. Varieties like Belstar and Gypsy are specifically bred for fall production. They handle the heat of early establishment in summer while producing tight, high-quality heads in fall cool. Like cabbage, broccoli needs boron. Watch for hollow stem syndrome, a condition where the main stem becomes hollow inside. It's caused by boron deficiency during rapid summer growth. The heads look fine from the outside, but the plant is structurally weak and the quality suffers. A soil test before planting will tell you if your garden needs boron supplementation. Forgettable? 6. Swiss chard. Swiss chard doesn't get nearly enough credit for the fall garden, and here's why it deserves a spot on this list. Most gardeners think of spinach when they want leafy greens in fall. Spinach is excellent, but it bolts easily in late summer heat and has a narrow planting window. Swiss chard is almost impossible to bolt in summer. It handles heat that would send spinach straight to seed, and it keeps producing new leaves from midsummer all the way until a hard freeze shuts it down. Plant Swiss chard in mid-July and you'll be harvesting fresh greens from late August through October. Sometimes into November depending on your region. That is a long, continuous harvest from a single planting. The key to keeping chard productive is harvesting technique. Always take the outer, older leaves first. Cut them at the base. This signals the plant's central growing point to keep pushing out new growth. If you let the outer leaves age on the plant without harvesting, production slows down significantly. Varieties like Ruby Red and Bright Lights are excellent choices. Beyond their visual appeal, those deep pigments are betalains, natural antioxidant compounds that also give the plant modest protection against intense summer sun. For gardeners in coastal or drier western regions, chard has one additional advantage over most leafy greens. It tolerates mild soil salinity better than almost any other vegetable on this list. Forgettable 7. Bush beans. This one surprises people every time. Bush beans are considered a summer crop. Most gardeners plant them in May, harvest in July, and move on. But here's what they're missing. A second sowing of bush beans in mid to late July produces a harvest in September that is cleaner, more productive, and far less pest damage than your summer planting. Here's why. By September, the peak populations of the Mexican bean beetle, the primary insect pest that destroys bean crops, have already declined. Your second planting essentially misses the worst of the pest pressure entirely. You get a full, healthy pod set with far less damage and far less spraying. Bush beans mature fast, typically 45 to 55 days, so a mid-July planting gives you harvest in early to mid-September, well before frost in most of the country. 2 important rules for July bean planting. First, always direct sow. Never transplant beans. They do not recover well from root disturbance, and the transplant shock in summer heat can set them back significantly. Second, choose disease-resistant varieties. Provider and Strike are both excellent for late summer sowing. High humidity and warm nights in late summer can encourage powdery mildew and bean rust. Disease-resistant varieties handle those conditions without losing yield. One critical reminder with bush beans: they are completely frost tender. Unlike everything else on this list, beans will not survive even a light freeze. Watch your forecast closely in late September and early October. If frost is coming, harvest everything, even the beans that aren't fully sized yet. They'll still be usable. Forgettable-ite turnips. Turnips are one of the most underrated vegetables in the American home garden. And I think part of the reason is that most people have only ever tasted turnips grown in summer heat. Summer-grown turnips can be aggressively sharp and pungent. The heat drives up the concentration of compounds called glucosinolates, the same family of compounds that gives mustard its heat. At high concentrations, they make the root harsh and bitter. Fall-grown turnips are a completely different experience. Cool autumn temperatures moderate those flavor compounds. The roots become mild, slightly sweet, and tender enough to eat raw. And turnips are fast, 40 to 50 days from seed to harvest. That is one of the shortest maturity windows on this entire list. A late July sowing gives you full-sized turnips in September and October, right when the flavor is at its best. Direct sow turnips and thin to 3 to 4 inches apart. Consistent moisture is critical. If the soil dries out and then gets a heavy rain or deep watering, the root expands rapidly after the drought stress. That sudden expansion cracks the root internally. Those cracks expose the tissue to soil pathogens and the root rots from the inside. Keep moisture even and consistent throughout the growing period. Purple top white globe is the classic American variety, and it delivers on both counts, flavorful roots and edible greens that are excellent sautéed or used like collards. You're getting 2 harvests from one plant. Here's the bottom line. Every single vegetable on this list follows the same fundamental logic. Use July heat to build the plant. Use fall cool to finish it. That sequence produces flavor and yield that spring growing simply cannot match. Carrots and beets sweeten after frost. Kale becomes nutty and tender after frost. Broccoli heads form tight and perfect in cool weather. Cabbage builds dense, storable heads. Swiss chard keeps producing through the longest harvest window of anything in this list. Bush beans deliver a clean, pest-light September harvest, and turnips give you 2 crops, roots and greens, in under 50 days. The window to plant all of this is open right now, but it won't stay open. Every day you wait past your calculated planting deadline, the math shifts against you. Gets shorter, growth slows. Phew! And the harvest that could have been in your kitchen ends up not making it before frost. Get these seeds in the ground. Your fall table depends on it. If this helped you, hit the like button. It genuinely helps other home gardeners find this information when they need it most. Drop a comment below and tell me which of these 8 you're planting this July. I read every single one. And if you're not subscribed yet, this is the kind of content we put out regularly. Real, practical, no-fluff gardening advice for American home gardeners who actually want to harvest something. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now go plant something.